Hey all, so this is a fun one today. This is our war against PALO, 7th War of Season 31, and I am back on Kingpin duty. And I gotta admit, part of the reason I'm on Kingpin duty is because a few of these fights scared me, and I didn't really want to feel guilty if they turned out poorly. But that caution aside, I was pretty confident they were good assignments, largely because the worst of them, a Mojo in Section 2, I had taken unboosted in off season. So I was kind of betting that I hadn't gotten too lucky there. So we start out with this Mr. Negative. Basically, the idea here is Kingpin counters everything. He counters the hazard shift. Mr. Negative is going to hit harder. Any debuffs that stick are going to hurt. Notice that 504, Lord. But we can knock him down even after he has gained light energy because, for one thing, if the degen from the L1 stops him from converting the light energy into a delirium, then it doesn't apply to us at all. But if it does, it's an active debuff and we'll purify it. No problem. So nice and easy, get this down in a little over 30 seconds, under 30 hits. Maybe could have played it a little better. Probably could have just outright parried him and kept the tempo up. I will probably try and do that next time. Yeah, simple fight there. Mole Man, the biggest issue here is the node, not him, because he's going to be going indestructible every time we get to our special 1. Which means that I am going to mostly stick to the special 2 here because it's going to allow me to ramp my damage faster, and he's going to shrug anything from the special 1 if he's not indestructible for it, so what's the point, right? Love how there he just holds his block for like a solid 6 seconds. Anyway, this fight is not going to be a problem at all. We're basically just waiting for him to come in, doing tons of damage, even with his indestructible. I think here I threw this. Why did I throw that? I think that was just a mistake. But anyway, we have the overpower up after the other one expired. Still finish it out just fine. So next up is the first one that had me slightly nervous. Notice that I throw on the Reed pre-fight here for Petrify. This is basically to safeguard against the possibility that the Sorcerer is running 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion, which is what I would expect from anyone in my alliance who places Mystics. Because we are eventually going to go into Overpower, right? Notice I tested the waters there by refreshing the Petrify with a heavy, but her power bar didn't even move, so at this point I'm assuming this person placed a Mystic with no points in Mystic Dispersion, and I am not worried in the slightest. Because I didn't want her to throw the special 1, because now she's going to nullify my overpower, but it's not really a big deal. Hazard Shift is going to keep our damage nice and high. There's no danger in this fight. Done. So next up we have a node you've seen me take before. This is Peni on Power Snack. Basic idea, use the House of X pre-fight to prevent her from purifying the stun debuff and auto-blocking. Use that auto-block to burn her auto-block charges, her Spider Sense charges, so that we can safely throw specials without getting hit. If we end up throwing specials into her having a couple charges, and she does auto-block, not the end of the world. We have a very high chance to evade. She has no counter to that. Reed is a rank 4 with significant physical and energy resistance. Basically, the only way that this fight gets out of hand is if I let the debuffs fall off, or if I eat a special 2. Avoid those two things, and we're alright. So notice while she's before I cross the next bar and she gets a Spider Sense charge, I can actually combo freely. Even though she has the pink sync shield up, as long as she doesn't have any of the blue charges, I can hit in freely and not worry about auto blocking. But when she has them, like right now, I want to stick to only hitting into her, regardless of how, during the passive stun, because she will try to purify it and auto block, will fail the purify because it's a passive, not an active debuff, and then will burn up her charges and reduce her chance to auto block the next one. So go ahead for the heavy there. Notice that it gets rid of her charges, and that means that we can safely throw this second special 2. We're reversing willpower, doing damage on the shock. I mean, this fight is beyond over. I don't even think at this point she could get to a special 2 if she tried. Notice when we trigger Power Snack, it actually drains her. Backup recovery is long since gone. This is totally in control. There, see, I do get one instance of Power Burn because I go for the special 1, trying to avoid getting to the next special 2. Even though I know there's a risk she'll block it, she could have potentially punished me and hit me a bit, but this is my only Reed fight of the war. I'm willing to sacrifice that health, and I was trying to get extra charges. Didn't work out because she kind of turtled up, but that's okay. So for Mojo, the biggest risk of this fight, as with basically any fight with Mojo, is proccing buffs during his anti-life field. If either he or I completes his current prompt and he goes into the anti-life field, and then one of my buffs expires, and they will expire 10 times faster during his anti-life field, if that's when they start, then I get degened, and that starts to hurt. So because of that, I'm going to be sticking to the special 1 as much as I can. I go for an intercept there, get punched in the face, not smart, should not have done that. But I'm sticking to the special 1 here because it will reduce his attack value. And so if a degen slips through, it's going to hurt less. Additionally, any blocked hits I take are going to hurt less. And it's not the special 2, which applies that unstoppable, and if we had completed a prompt, if we threw the special 2 during anti-life field, then the unstoppable would go away almost immediately and be a guaranteed degen. Very bad. So notice here, we're making sure not to block for too long, even though that means we are proccing decks. This is something that I see people get wrong in some Mojo fights, in my opinion, is that they get so scared of, oh, dex is the problem. It's not. The problem is buffs ending during anti-life. If he is not an anti-life, if the reason you are dexing is preventing him from completing a prompt, then that's a good thing and it's actually keeping you alive. You just have to watch for, at the very end there, when he gets a prompt like dash backwards that you can't do anything to avoid him completing. That's when you need to stop dexing. Block all of the hits, bait your heavies, unless of course the next prompt is also a heavy. But here's the thing, you can actually dex during the anti-life field as long as you then don't hit him, because that's what causes the dex to actually have a duration and to expire and to cause the degen. So on some nodes it can make sense to remove dex against Mojo, but in general I actually don't advise it and prefer to just really understand his prompt system and how to avoid getting punished by it, because that lets us use characters like Kingpin who have their own buffs as long as we just play around Mojo's base kit and the matchup allows us to take him down before bad RNG can mean it gets out of hand. So on to Korg. Thorns isn't an issue here. You're going to see me just basically completely ignore it because I'll heal up the damage. Not a problem. It hurts, but I'll heal it back up from willpower, and I'm betting I have enough health to deal with it. The problem here is the way those armors stack, because the way you're supposed to get rid of them is hitting into block. You don't really want to do that against Korg, because eventually he's going to go unblockable and unstoppable, and even before then it's going to make his special 1 unblockable where it otherwise would not have been. And because you're not getting rid of those armor ups, you only have 2 ways of doing significant damage. You either land crits, which ignore most of the opponent's armor, or you do damage over time. So that's why I'm spamming the special ones here for the most part, because that damage over time is getting around the armor, but only a little bit. Because the reason we're not relying on crits, although we are going to get some, is because Korg has native crit resistance. He was one of the first champions with that attribute in his base kit, and it's annoying. Thankfully, this is Kingpin. We are doing plenty of damage, even without the crits. He's getting chunked down. I'll be fine. So notice that this degen right here, which we applied with Overpower and 4 debuffs active, somehow did less damage than we did with the very first degen of this fight, which we applied with only, I think, 6 debuffs up. So that proves that Kingpin is still bugged. There is an issue where I think it's the second Overpower buff that he triggers actually reduces his attack. It's a weird interaction. I haven't played him quite enough to be sure of the exact workings of it, but that fight, if you watch what his attack value should be and check the numbers on the various degens, proves that something is wrong. But then we have Nick. So there was a time when I was my battle group's primary answer to Nick Fury, usually with magic, back in the days when she was one of his best answers and he was relatively new. So I have been quite comfortable with him. I fought him a lot. I'm used to his movements. But it's also been a long time since those days. I took a break somewhere in the middle of there, and I feel like my last few Nick fights have not been quite as clean. I even had a death to him several seasons ago. So he sometimes makes me a little bit nervous, especially in war, because he just hits really, really hard. And I would prefer, usually, to be using a mutant against him, especially somebody like Archangel, who can just bypass the second life. Not going to be possible here, but I was extremely happy with how this fight went. So one thing you'll notice me doing is taking advantage of stun immune to parry sometimes multiple times in a single combo, because every well-timed block helps control his charges. We're keeping his charges low with the ability accuracy reduction from the degen off the special 1. We are staying in tune with his movements enough to bait heavies either by blocking or sometimes without blocking, doing the block 2 dash, which can get him to throw it. We're pushing to the special 2 whenever we can. When those things are not possible because we can't afford to block because he goes unblockable, then we're staying on top of our intercepts, but we're not forcing the intercepts by backdrafting. We're waiting for him to dash in, waiting for him to dash out, and finding those nice clean openings. We're hitting into his block where we can to push him to the special 2. This is how I try and fight Nick. It doesn't always go this clean, but this is the goal. Push him to special 2, block when he has special 1 and he is blockable, bait out his heavies, and just try and avoid the scariest thing about his kit, which is, oh, that special 1 is going to be unblockable and I have no way to deal with that damage. Because everything else is manageable. If you fight Nick enough, you get used to his movements. You can intercept him, you can deal with the evades, you can deal with the heavy. You just want to avoid the unblockable special 1. And so thankfully, that's what I did a very good job of in this fight. So I'm legitimately proud of that one. But more importantly, I'm incredibly proud of my battle group and my alliance this war, because we in Battle Group 3 finished with a 164, so did Battle Group 2 and Battle Group 1. That is the best war we have had that I can remember being in SSx. There are a few others that come close, but only 3 deaths is really, really good. Now, as I pointed out in this video, I was running into mystics that weren't necessarily running max mystic dispersion the way that we expect from most of our opponents. But still, that's a whole lot of really good execution, and I'm very proud of everybody, and I'm hoping that we can hold on to that going into the last week of the season. Just awesome, awesome performance. Really happy with everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's always fun using Kingpin, and it makes me laugh how you can take him into fights where it feels like he shouldn't work, and he does anyway. He's definitely one of the single best skill champs in the game right now, specifically for war, and I am so glad that I have one and have been able to use one so often. So until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.